Hello, everyone. I am so sorry that today we're not having a live class, but we are having some wild weather here in Mississippi. Last night, we got some storms coming through. Thankfully, where I am, we didn't get any of the tornadoes that spawned, but it was still pretty rocky, and we are forecasted to get some more strong weather later today. So I wanted to make sure that we wouldn't have a class interrupted by losing internet or power or anything like that possibly happening. So this is why I'm doing it this way, just so we can make sure everything is clear. All right, so what are we doing? So we're going to be talking about chapter 8, which is our final chapter that we'll be dealing with for this semester. Woohoo! But it is a big chapter, and your final project is going to be centered around this chapter. So it's going to be really important that you pay close attention to this. And next week, when we meet, the most of the class time will be devoted for your teams to get together during class and talk and work on the final project. Hopefully, you will at least have some text discussion about it before getting together next week because there's only a couple of weeks to put this together. So the sooner that you can get together and start talking about this project, the better. I will just warn you right there. Don't put this off. So let's talk about chapter 8. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and there's going to be some participation questions in this presentation. So you will notice I have these in bold. So when you are writing in the assignment, it'll say class recording with participation. This is where you're going to write your responses. All right, here we go. All right, so this chapter, like I said, it's pretty meaty. I will be putting up these PowerPoints separately because there will be a quiz in next week's module over this. And of course, your final project will be around this chapter as well. So let me go ahead and start us from the beginning. As you notice, this is part 1. I'm going to be doing 2 different presentations because it is such a big chapter. All right, so let's talk about first what is conflict. The book talks about the sociologists William Wilmot and Joyce Hockner. They break it down as to what this big concept of conflict is. And it is an expressed struggle. We know that when people are having a conflict, they are saying that they are upset about something. It's between at least 2 interdependent people. Of course, we can have countries in conflict, right? We can have communities in conflict, but we're really talking about individuals for our purposes. They have incompatible goals. They don't have the resources they need. They feel there's interference. They feel like they're not being heard for what they need. They may have a conflict in achieving the type of goal that they want. So, for example, let's say you're having a conflict within your own team, that there's an issue during our storming stage that maybe seems like not a couple people are on the same page in terms of what type of idea they want to do. So they're trying to achieve the goal of coming to consensus of your one idea. So here is a participation question. How do you personally avoid conflict? Or do you avoid conflict? Why or why not? Please write in the prompt for this assignment your own feelings about conflict. Do you try to go out of your way or do you try to address it head on? Doesn't have to be anything long. Just this is just a way for you to really think about how you handle it. Personally, for me, I try to put out a, a little flame before it's an inferno. That's a phrase that I have picked up over the years. It's better to address something when it comes up before letting it, just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's a lot harder to tackle. Now, if that's something you don't do, maybe it's something that you want to consider. And it's not easy. I know trying to address something is, it takes a little vulnerability, it takes some bravery sometimes, but this chapter also addresses how to do it too. So let's go ahead. So let's talk about the benefits of conflict. And not all conflict is bad. It helps you to think about alternatives to the situation, to test out some other ideas. So conflict doesn't always mean that's like, people are totally butting heads and they're mad at each other. It just could be that there's simply got two different points of view. So, addressing that, hey, let's think about this instead. That can help move that conflict into another direction. So the problems with conflict, which I'm sure you're probably aware of, it can interfere with your group progress. And we know within the storming stage, this is normally where this is happening. There may be a little bit of conflict going on, trying to figure people out, trying to figure out what the team is going to do moving forward, how people feel about different ideas. And it can slow your group's progress, but that's not always a bad thing. It just depends how you handle the conflict. Now, if a conflict isn't addressed early enough, it will simmer, it will build, it will halt your group's progress, and it could create the group's existence, their possibility of disbanding. And that's what we don't want, right? We want our team to be able to move through the conflict, be able to address any issues, be able to find a solution and be able to keep moving forward. And we're going to be addressing these things during this presentation as well. So conflict comes from very different places, right? So we can perceive a problem or people differently. There's personalities, right? How many times have you been with somebody, could be a family member, where their personality just does not mesh with yours very well? Somebody's knowledge of a subject could create a conflict. Maybe somebody seems like they know everything, and maybe the way they present it rubs you the wrong way. Cultures, maybe just not being aware of somebody's cultural background or the things that they hold dear can create a conflict. There could be a power status struggle involved. uh, a procedural expectation. That's something where I think falls more into play with teams, where people expect maybe the person in charge to have all that's necessary to have a successful meeting or be able to start putting a project together. And when that person doesn't seem to be organized or doesn't have people's time in mind when something is being done, it could create some conflict where people are feeling like this person doesn't seem to know what's going on, or their expectations are not realistic. That can create issues, especially when we're talking about small groups. Unequal resources. I think that's something that is more apparent when it comes to conflicts between countries or communities when it's not a fair playing ground. Here is another participation thing to write about, please. What are the main reasons you have conflict? Again, this is only things that you feel comfortable sharing. Don't feel like you have to write anything super personal, but think about these causes here. Why do you typically find yourself in situations where you feel like you're in a conflict? Do you feel like you are misunderstood, or you misunderstand other people? Do you feel like maybe you don't have enough knowledge about a situation? Think about, those types of things when you're writing about this. So on page 129 in your book, if you have the same edition, oh, this is blurred. That's not helpful. The Communicating in Small Groups, 12th edition, that's what should be in there. So it talks about the sequences of a conflict stage. Okay, so first of all, we've got the persuasion. Usually people start off, trying to use good reasoning for as to why they feel a certain way, or they have good sources backing up their arguments. When that fails, They may be going something towards a seduction stage. Now, usually when we talk about seduction, we talk about something that's more of a sexual nature. It's not what we're talking about here. It's using more emotional language. Like, well, don't you think that you would feel better if we did this? Or wouldn't you prefer, those types of languages. You see the picture there of, a car purchase going on. So maybe the customer is feeling a little not so sure about paying, a certain amount for that car, but the salesman is trying to show the benefits of getting that particular model. That's using seductive language. And then there's verbal aggression. So logic isn't working, emotional language isn't working, threats start happening. So this doesn't normally happen in like sales situations, but it could happen, say in teamwork. It could happen, especially when people's statuses are feeling threatened. It could happen in that type of situation. And physical action was just all out war. That is the last stage of conflict, but nothing else has brought any progress. Now, obviously, we don't want, Jerry Springer type things happening, chairs being thrown. That should be the absolute last thing that takes place. Now, having said that, sometimes when there are protests, we want always try to have peaceful protests when there is like a really meaningful thing that people want to happen. But unfortunately, sometimes physical violence is a result. And not that we want physical violence. Sometimes physical violence helps to end the conflict. Again, that should be the absolute last thing we want. But these are the stages of conflict, and I think it's helpful to know, where we land in terms of when we're having conflict. Do we usually get out of it during a persuasive stage? Do we tend to get out of it after a seductive stage? Hopefully never getting to a verbal aggression stage. So there's some misconceptions about conflict. So myth number one, it should be avoided at all costs. We should never, ever have conflict. That's a myth. Myth number two, all conflict comes from a misunderstanding. That's also a myth. And the third myth is that all conflict can be resolved. So in your participation, why are these myths? You can look this up in your book to give you some idea, but think about it. Really think about why it's a myth that we should always avoid conflict. Why is it a myth that all conflict comes from a misunderstanding and that conflict can always be resolved? Think about that. So the book talks about different types of conflict. Are you surprised that there's actually different types of it? Okay. So the first type they talk about is pseudo conflict. And that's simply there's just been some poor communication going on. People misunderstand each other. So how do we manage this? Ask for clarity when people say something by a certain term. Maybe you don't understand the type of term they used or a type of phrase they used. It never hurts to ask for clarity. I think most people prefer to be asked, well, oh, I'm not sure what you meant by that. Can you elaborate or can you clarify that for me? And try to, not have a defensive feel when you're asking for clarity. Try to keep it more about the situation versus the person. So you're creating a supportive climate versus creating a defensive one. Be an active listener. So if you've taken interpersonal communication, you probably have heard about active listening versus passive listening. So really actively listen what someone is saying. Question if you need to, not question how they feel, but question what they mean. Paraphrase if you need to. You may need to say, what I heard you say is blah, 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 blah. and maybe rephrase how that person feels, or maybe how you feel. Then there's simple conflict. So it's just simply not seeing eye to eye on how to go about how something is done. Now, you may have come across this within your own team. Maybe someone wants to do something a certain way, and then someone else says, I don't think that's going to work because of blah, blah, blah. That's simple conflict. So, how do we manage this? So clarifying the perception of what's being done. Keep that discussion focused on the issue at hand. It's never about the person. If need be, use facts to support your point of view. Keep it to more of a problem-solving approach, and maybe finding ways to compromise on it. Uh, and make that conflict a group's concern. So it's bringing it back to what's good for the group or the team, I should say. And maybe taking it one issue at a time. If it seems like there's like a few different things wrapped up into the process of doing something, and find areas of agreement about it. So these are just tools you can use to help manage that simple conflict. Now, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a very, simple way to manage it. But as long as you keep the discussion focused on the issue, uh, brainstorm as a group, how to deal with it, it'll be pretty easy to work yourself through. Then there is ego conflict. And one of your assignments for this week's homework is going to be centered around this. This is the trickier type of conflict. It's when people become very defensive about their position because they think they're being personally attacked. And I think this is where a lot of things go wrong for people. They take things very personally, and it's only normal that we get defensive about how we feel and we want to lash out. Relational conflict, which is underneath ego conflict, it's when somebody just simply doesn't like someone else, they don't respect them, they don't value what they have to say. So relational conflict comes under ego conflict. So you may have run into a situation where you're working with somebody, you just don't like them. They just rub you the wrong way. And unfortunately, we can't always get out of that, right? But there's ways we can work around it when we just don't really like that person. So here we go. Identify where you can agree with that person. Again, it's not about him or her personally. It's finding out those things or those issues where you guys can work together. Active listening on both parts goes a long way. Mirroring what someone said, asking to paraphrasing what they say, just like we talked about in the last slide. Return that discussion back to a key issue. Keep that personality issue out of it. Get back to the key issue. Turn that discussion into a problem to be solved, and look for new information to create a breakthrough in what you're talking about. Now, having said all this, we need to make sure that we are keeping that discussion without the ego language. So what is the ego language? It's yet use of you language. You always say this, you always do that. That's going to make that person defensive right off the bat. When you hear you, what, me? Wait a minute here. Now, this is something my husband, I've had to work on over the years. We used to do this when we would get uptight with each other. You're always late for this. Well, what do you think that person's going to do when they hear that type of statement? They're going to get all backed up and say, what do you mean I'm always late? You always do this. It's you want to shoot back with something that person does. So in the first place, if you're in that situation, you have to really keep yourself from going into that you place. Really own your own feelings about something and make how you feel about the action and not about the person. If you make it more about the person, it's going to escalate. So here's a video here summarizing about these types of conflict.
Okay, so if you put a bunch of people together and ask them to achieve something, the chances are there will be a disagreement or two. Conflict is a natural part of working in teams, and it can occur for a number of reasons. For example, it could be a conflict caused by processes, overlapping roles, or differences in opinion. Sometimes conflicts can be caused by external influences, but of course the classic reason is interpersonal conflict. Now, when a conflict occurs, there are steps you can take to solve it constructively. The correct way would be to take a step back and ask yourself some challenging questions. Start by asking yourself, why is there a conflict in the first place? Simply by thinking about the cause of the conflict could be enough to give you the solution. It may help to write it down or discuss it with someone, but if that doesn't shed any light, then try seeing it from the other person's point of view. Best-selling
I think that is an excellent point. Is first, maybe you need to step back, maybe write it down, how you feel about it. You're still not sure why something is happening. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. I think that really does help to shed some insight as to why there is a conflict going on.
author Stephen Covey uses the phrase, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." By this he means if you understand the other person's point of view, then you can get your point across much easier. Finally, try to remember what's really important. What are your priorities? Is your point of view in line with the overall objectives of the team? And are you being true to your principles? Try to keep emotions out of it and keep conversations professional. But most importantly, be focused on a solution. Don't dwell on the conflict or hold grudges. Be focused on finding a win-win outcome. Although conflict can be damaging to a team's productivity, it's worth considering the upsides of conflict. Yes, conflict can have its benefits. Think about it. If ideas aren't challenged and different views aren't aired, then how do good ideas ever become great ideas? The Honda Corporation are actually known to encourage conflict in its design teams because they recognize that out of the chaos can come great creativity. So the right amount of conflict can be good, but generally, teams working in harmony perform better. So to be an effective member of a team, you need to be mindful of why conflict occurs and the questions you can ask yourself in order to find a resolution.
Okay, so this is a bonus question. Those first few questions I gave in the presentation, that is what you need to write about in order to get full participation points. The next things I'm going to be asking are for extra credit. So if you want to get 10 extra credit points, then please write about these things. Okay? Just based on the video you just watched, what is something that really resonated with you in terms of working through a conflict? Let me know what is something from that video I just showed you that really resonated with you on how to resolve a conflict. That is a bonus question. All right. So let's take a look at the next presentation. This is much shorter, but it is part 2 of chapter 8. And you may be wondering, why do I have this split into presentations? It's mostly because to save space, because a lot of times when we upload PowerPoints to Canvas, how large the file is can take a while. And I used to have this all as one PowerPoint, and it was difficult to load up. So I had to break it up. That is the reason why. Let me go ahead and take a moment to bring up the new one. One moment. Okay, and I will show you the homework, what is going to be happening. And please Text me or email me any questions you have. Please, please, please. I don't want anyone feeling like they don't understand what's going on. And here is the new one. All right. Conflict management styles. So this is where we're getting into how do we deal with these sticky situations. All right, you may notice Michael Scott here. There is a very good office of the episode where he is trying to do these conflict management styles not very effectively. So we have what's known as competing. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. That's where you're more concerned about what you're going to get out of it and not really caring what someone else is getting out of it. You just want to win. Then there is avoidance. Yes, those are the pros and the cons of that one. Sorry, I forgot I had that in there. You're more focused on winning. That's a pro of it, but it's not a fair negotiation. Then we have avoidance, and that is a lose-lose on conflict management. So what happens here is that you don't really have like a huge need to win. You don't really care if that person wins in it. It's really ideal for a small issue. It's like uh, choosing where you want to go for dinner. Those type of smaller things. It could work for your family or friends. You doesn't want to make a big thing out of it. You're avoiding a huge conflict. But if you do this in a passive aggressive way, if you're just kind of hinting around the issue, it could possibly escalate it. So just be aware of how you're using the avoidance. Then we have the accommodation. So this is where you're putting your own needs or wants aside, and you're letting that other side have the win, having more of the win. And you may have, like the saying says, pick your battles. This is what accommodating is all about. You're like, okay, I'm going to let you have this, and so we can move on, right? However, if you do this a lot, you can create a perception about yourself that you're a pushover, that you're very easy to give in. And there are times when that's not really a good idea to do. You're going to end up losing something valuable to yourself. So you have to really think about if the situation or the project, if it's worth losing something of yourself. There's compromise. So someone is losing something on both sides here. So if let's say that you don't have a lot of time to make some decisions, that you know time is of the essence here, and each side has the same status involved. So for example, in your teams, everyone's on the same status here. So if you're having maybe not necessarily a disagreement, but different ideas about your final project, you may say, okay, maybe we can take part of this person's idea and part of this person's idea, and maybe there's a way we can make both of them work in this. So you're making a compromise there. But yeah, each side is giving up something to move ahead in it. So it just depends again on the context of the situation if compromising is the right way to go. Then there is collaboration. So that's where you're coming together and each person has a high concern that each person wins in this. All right, it's a win-win. So you're creating a strategy that benefits both of you. And in sales in particular, or in diplomatic positions, that's what people are really trying to do. That each person is walking out of it, happy, and they've got something out of this. But it takes more time to get to this solution. So collaborations are like this. That I think it's probably, most people want a win-win situation, but it does take some more time, more focus, and working through some details. So talking about the sticky situations, it's not easy to verbalize how you feel about something. Uh, Identify what the problem is. If you need to write this down, what is it in particular that is an issue? If you need to make a date and a time to talk about it, that's going to allow you to come in with a cooler and a clearer head to talk about something without being all hyped up about it. Describe what your problem is and what you need. Own what you have. Don't, get the ego conflict language that you do this and you're always this. You're owning your own feelings here. Think about the other person's point of view. Like the video said, you have to think about, maybe what that person might be thinking or feeling in order to come to a compromise here, possibly. Negotiate a solution. Maybe, hopefully both people are in a win-win position after you negotiate. And maybe have to follow up on it at a later time if this is a bigger conflict that you're dealing with. So in terms of your, personal conflicts, I can tell you that I never discuss anything big with my own husband uh, when either one of us is hungry or we're tired. If I know we're going to be talking about financial situations or budgets. Neither one of us likes talking about that. We know this about each other. We make a date and a time to do it. It just makes it easier for the both of us. So maybe you can think of situations when you know you need to make a date and a time for that. So here is a bonus question towards the 10 extra credit points. So I gave you one earlier. Here is the other one. How did you deal with a sticky situation you had with somebody? Which of the 5 conflict management styles did you use? Again, what was a sticky situation that you had with someone? What was one of the 5 conflict management styles that you used? You don't have to go into great detail what the situation was. You can talk about in general terms, but what was the conflict management style that you utilized? Did it work? So this is, oh shoot, they're not gonna let me show the scene. I'll see if I can find it and post it separately. YouTube, sometimes they're jerks about that. So I think that's the end of that. Anyway, it was that scene I was telling you about The Office where Michael is trying to work out a compromise between Oscar and Angela over a poster. So I'll see if I can find it and post it. It is very, very fun. All right, let us talk about the final project. So let me go ahead and bring that up. All right, so the final project requirement. And this is going to be published by the time you watch this video. All right, so your teams are presenting this on the exam day on December 14th. That is our normal Wednesday. The time starts at 2:30 instead of 3. Supposed to go into 4:30. I doubt we'll need to go that long, but that is the time we are allotted for this meeting time. So you all should know now how to put a project together, knowing how to create team roles, knowing what your strengths are, knowing how to delegate, deliver on time. We've already done 2 projects. This is not only about testing your team's abilities, but also serving your fellow students. What you're going to do is teach your fellow students about conflict. And I can tell you, just about every time I teach this class or any class that involves a team project, everyone is nervous about that possibility of it. of that conflict. This is how you can help them. You're going to create a video. All right. It should be an original video. You can use links or photos of Napa Valley College within the video. That's fine. Any music that you use for a soundtrack needs to be copyright free. I'll explain why in a moment. The minimum amount of time is to be 1:30, no more than 3 minutes and 30 seconds. This is going to be for a YouTube video. Think about how students relate to each other. Keep it personal, conversational. You've already done some skits, right? So think about a possible scenario you can use, and we'll get into what you'll be focusing on and your team in particular in just a couple minutes. Now, here's the kicker. Within your video, at least one Napa Valley College resource needs to be mentioned with a photo or a link at the video for a resource. This is where you are helping your fellow students. You're also going to create 2 Facebook or Instagram social media posts. You can make a reel on Instagram or just photography. Part of these posts, please use the hashtags We Are NVC and Napa Valley College and any appropriate ones that relate to your particular topic. And the reason why that I am talking about using a Napa Valley College resource, these hashtags, is that it's very possible that what you're creating is going to be used by the Napa Valley College newsroom. I have reached out to them to see if they would want to use our projects. They may want to. I know that they may find that what is turned in, they may not feel may work, and that is their prerogative. But I really would like for the projects that you all are creating to be helpful to your other students. Okay, so here we go. Team 1, America, Ashley, Oy, and Marielle. You're going to be focusing on conflict management styles. How you do that is entirely up to you. If you want to have the Avengers try to work out a conflict using the conflict management styles, go for it. Or, think about, any type of scenario where you can illustrate those. Team 2, Paul, Chelsea, Nemo, Beto, and Michael. You're going to be focusing on groupthink. What we don't want to have happen within our teams is groupthink. So how are you going to illustrate that? And why that's important to avoid when working in a team. And last but not least, Team 3, RC, Anna, Han, and Melissa. You're going to be focusing on conflict types. So I give you the page numbers there. And again, it isn't totally up to your team how you're going to address your topic. Think of those creative ways. I really advocate for creating a scenario, all right? Think about, television shows or movies that can be inspiration. But if you want to use friends as part of your video or part of your social media post, that's fine. But I do have a requirement here, okay? Just like with your other projects, we need a taskmaster, a masters, video and post writers. The scripts that you write and the social media posts that you write need to be submitted by your presentation day. The performers, so at least 2 people from your team will need to be the on-camera talent. However, like I said, you can use more people, but not everyone on the team has to be in the video or on the social media posts. So if you are more of a background player, this is going to be better for you. And then of course, someone to edit, making sure that the video looks good or assisting with the videos for the social media posts. Again, all this can be broken up how you see fit. So if you're the taskmaster, you can always work as a performer. If you're an editor, you can also help write. So just, utilize your strengths, or if you want to try something new, go for it. All right. Here is your deadlines. So in the discussion assignment. Uh, I need to change this. Um, I need to change it by class time. Um, we need to know what your team role preferences are. All right, I'll make this switch before I post this. Okay. Tuesday the 13th, your taskmaster needs to upload your meeting notes, uh, agendas, minutes, all that good stuff. Who's going to be working on what assignments? I need to know that. Notes from your meetings, who was there, who wasn't there, what was discussed, just like before. And then on the 14th, that's when the project is due. Your scripts are uploaded and you are going to show the class your videos and your social media posts. They're hard deadlines, everybody. If late, anything is turned in late, which has not been an issue, thank you very much. If it is an issue, points will be deducted. So I'm going to let you see the grading for your team. There is a team score and an individual score. So as you can see up here, there's a 300 possible point total, 150 on the team side, 150 for individual. So grading for the team, making sure that you're including a Napa Valley College resource, using any links, making sure you have the relevant hashtags for your social media posts. That's 50 points. The quality of your projects, the quality of your video, the quality of your social media posts, that they're engaging, creative, well-produced. The topic is, what you're working with is clear and the deadlines are met. That's 100 points possible. For the individual grading, that you are attending the meetings that are set up, that you have been communicating within your team, and then how well you performed your assigned task. So I'm looking at both sides of these so I can, grade everybody fairly. Okay, I know that's a lot there. So the next time that I see you next week, I'm expecting, people to have questions, but please ask me questions before the next class so that you can get a good start on this right away. So please do not worry about this deadline, Tuesday night, December 6th. That is going to be that class day, December 7th. I should know by the end of that class what your team role preferences are or your assignments, okay? I want you guys to have a time to really talk it over, and then you can make some definite decisions about who's going to work on what particular task. All right, so I will make that change, and then we will go from there. Okay, let's talk about the other homework before we end this. So there are two homework assignments here. Exercise 10, conflict management styles. So this is going to be pretty simple, but again, this is helping you to figure out what your default is. There is no length requirement to this. You can just write this as a file or as a text entry box. First, you're going to take this conflict management quiz, and you'll hit the link, and you'll take the quiz. You'll take that quiz, and then let me know what your result was, and if you agreed with it and why. Talk about conflict you've had with someone and how you resolved it. What style did you use? And were you satisfied with the outcome of that conflict, or would you change it if you could? I take points off if there's poor spelling, punctuation, grammar, and if there's any content that's missing, I take points off. Okay, so there is that assignment. And then the other one is a discussion. Go to module instead. All right, so ego conflict, trying to avoid that, right? So what you're going to do, you're going to read this scenario here. And after you read the scenario, write about in your reply what you would do if you were the taskmaster in this situation to help these two team members get out of their ego conflict. And if you were those team members in this conflict, what would you say instead to keep it from getting personal? No, again, no length requirement for that. It's just I'm looking for content, what you say, and then you're going to go back and reply to another student's post. What did you think about what he or she said? Okay. That's 10 points. So don't forget to go back and reply to that. Okay. So I've thrown a lot at you. So please make sure that you write your responses to the participation questions that I asked. 3 of those were required. Those are the ones that were in bold on the first PowerPoint. And then I gave the 2 bonus ones for the extra credit. Okay, again, let me know if any questions at all. Text me, email me, and hopefully I will not have really bad weather later today. Take care. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. Bye now.